Well, Laurie, I know you're kind of coming up to this area of the woods of the country, so to speak, here in the Northwest, in Seattle specifically. You've got an event called Comfort My People Israel Conference that starts on the 3rd. What is that all about, anyway?
Actually, this is going to be our first conference that we're going to host at Church for All Nations with Pastor Mark Biltz at El Shaddai Ministries. And the goal is to talk about these issues with the church. You know, we've talked before about the problem with Christians' lack of understanding biblically as to our responsibility to Israel and to the Jewish people. And as we watch the Middle East unfold in our lifetime, we're seeing events that are changing the whole landscape of that region of the world. And a lot of the complaints now, we've got, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, we've got Syria that is just out of control. We saw what happened in Libya and other parts of the Middle East. But we hear the same mantra constantly stated, and that is that Israel is going to be annihilated. They're going to be pushed into the Mediterranean Sea. The leader of Egypt, 2 months before he was even elected, Morsi, made a public statement that Jerusalem is going to be the capital of Egypt. I mean, we hear all of this rhetoric coming out of the Middle East about taking the land from the Jewish people, from Israel. And Christians should be speaking up and holding our elected officials accountable, especially in Western countries like the United States, like in Britain. We should be making the phone calls and having the conversations with our elected officials to make sure that Israel is protected in that region of the world. We've heard a lot of talk about how this is a great thing, the Arab Spring, and unfortunately all we've seen is more attacks on Israel. We don't even know that the Egyptian government is going to agree to even have dialogue with Israel. So our goal at this conference is really to go in, to dig into the scriptures, to talk about this issue. Whose land does this belong to anyway? And
it sounds like it's kind of like an update and a call to action, both, really.
It really is. And we're going to equip people with education, with the information, and then we're going to mobilize them to action. Steve, this is the most important year. We've got an election coming up. It is the most important election of our lifetime. And I know we hear that every election cycle. Oh, this is the most important election. But this is. And if we as Christians do not stand in defense of Israel and our Jewish brethren and help them, defend their land, then we will not be able to defend our land. In fact, we even see this whole issue with Congressman Bachmann calling for an investigation in Washington as to the infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood into our government. This is not just happening in Israel. This is happening in the United States, and it's not just happening on a federal level. It's happening on the state and the local levels as well.
Well, and on that particular issue, she's been heavily criticized for that, I guess. Perhaps it hasn't been as directed an investigation or as some would like. Do you think there should be an investigation of some sort, and what would be investigated, if so?
I certainly do, and what needs to be investigated, we need to look into the relationships of the Muslim leaders who have been appointed into positions within this government. We need to look into their relationships with organizations like CARE, ISNA, the Council, other organizations that are tied and linked to the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is the umbrella organization of all these terrorist organizations. And we have found some disturbing evidence, especially with this administration, with regards to putting people in positions of authority that have ties to these groups. If we remember back during the Holy Land Foundation hearings back in Dallas, Texas, and for your listeners, just to remind them, the Holy Land Foundation was determined or was exposed to be the largest fundraising organization in the United States for terrorists. And the organization was shut down, and it was stated in the lawsuit, in the decision by the judge, that CARE was an unindicted co-conspirator. And I've had an attorney tell me that unindicted co-conspirator basically means is that they had enough information to indict them, but because they ran out of the resources, they couldn't continue. So they took the battle where they knew they could nail them. And unfortunately, CARE still operates. We still open the door into our positions of authority to this organization. We've got Muslim Brotherhood members who are educating our police, our military. And this, like I said, this is not just a problem on the federal level. We are witnessing this issue on the state and local level as well. You may know, or you may have heard, that in Tennessee, the governor has appointed Tamar Ali as the economic advisor to the Tennessee government, to the governor. And her specialty actually happens to be Sharia compliance. So we in Tennessee, the citizens, are asking the question, what is going on here? Why are we hiring people to be economic advisors to the governor that are well-versed in Sharia compliance? Because
Well, I was just going to ask you, do you see this as a conspiracy may be a big word, but how do you see this coming together? Is this a concerted plan? Can we use those terms, do you think?
Yes, you most certainly can. This is Islam's goal of implementing a caliphate, a global caliphate. And we, unfortunately, in the United States, because of political correctness, we don't want to talk about that. But all we have to do is look across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe, and we see an infiltration happening there. You can go on the Internet and watch YouTube videos of imams who are making these outrageous statements of taking over America, destroying the great Satan and the little Satan, America and Israel. So they make no bones about it. But unfortunately, here in the United States, because someone who is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood happens to put on a suit and a tie, and he looks clean-shaven, we think, oh, well, he's not part of that group. Well, unfortunately, this is what is happening, and this is what Congressman Bachmann is wanting to look into. We just need to make sure that we are not putting ourselves in a compromising position and threatening the very security and the fabric of this country. We don't need Sharia compliance here in the United States. And even George Bush, back in December, right before he stepped down as president, he had invited some leaders, Muslim leaders who were versed in Sharia compliant finance, to the Justice Department, as well as some of our financial leaders, to discuss this issue of Sharia compliance in our business, in how we govern. And this is very disturbing, because Sharia law or Sharia compliance in anything will supersede our U.S. Constitution. And that is the goal with Sharia law, and that is how Islamists view Sharia law. They say publicly Sharia law is higher than any other law. And we run the risk, when bringing in Sharia compliant procedures or funding economic opportunities, we run the risk of bringing this into our culture. And slowly, it's like putting the frog in the pot and turning it on and cooking the frog slowly.
We're talking with Laurie Cardoza-Moore from the group Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, an event coming up on the 3rd in Seattle that we've talked about. Let me ask you, based on what you've been discussing right now, where does the Obama administration fit within some of these situations that you were talking about in the United States, as far as bringing in people who may be more pro-Islam that concern you? Well,
one of the biggest things that concerns me most recently is his relationship with Egypt. You know, it wasn't 3 months before Mubarak was removed from office, and that was at the hands of the United States leadership, Obama, 3 months before that happened, we sent the Egyptian government $2 billion, and we sent them a military package of over $2 billion as well. And then somehow 3 months later, this administration decides that it's time to bring Mubarak down and remove him. And even back then, when all of that was going on, all the pundits were saying, all the conservative pundits were saying, this is not good. Muslim Brotherhood is going to come in, fill the vacuum. We had Christian leaders, in the Coptic Christians in Egypt, saying, if Mubarak goes down, the Muslim Brotherhood will come in. It will not bode well for Christians. And we can look now and see the evidence of that. We are continuing to fund. Now we have a Muslim Brotherhood government. It's official. Morsi is a Muslim Brotherhood member. He stated 2 months before he was elected that Jerusalem was going to be the capital of Egypt, and he didn't know that the previous agreements by the previous administration of the Egyptian government was going to stand. So we had all of this going on, and now we are sending our tax dollars to shore up a Muslim Brotherhood government. The Muslim Brotherhood is the umbrella of all the terrorist organizations in the world. Our federal law does not allow for us to fund terrorists, let alone terrorist-run governments. But we've allowed this administration to tell us, oh, no, they're moderate. They're okay. There's a moderate wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. No, there's not.
What concern do you have if the Obama administration is placed in office for another 4 years?
My fear is that the United States that you and I grew up with, Steve, will not be the United States of America for our children and our grandchildren. That's what I fear, that the great experiment called the United States of America will not exist.
How do you see an agenda that he has that will be put into place further, or will we just continue on the road that we're on now, do you think? He
has publicly said that when he is reelected, he will do even more. He will speed it up. We already see that by executive order, he is making decisions and bypassing Congress. Congress is the closest representation to we, the people of the United States. They are our voice. And if he eliminates our voice in what goes on in our government, then we are in trouble. He has jeopardized the security and the very foundation of this country. And it shocks me, Steve, that people still want to vote for this man. Still believe in his change.
Okay. For more information on both your event happening in Seattle as well as just some of the things you've talked about now, is there a website where people can go to? Is that the PJTN.org?
That is correct, and I want to encourage your listeners to visit our website frequently. We post articles that are relative to the new anti-Semitism and the threat of Islam in our country on that website so they can stay informed on what's going on. They can share the information with their family and friends. We're also on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
We can be followed there. But, yes, and they can register. If they're in the neighborhood, they can register online as well to attend our event, Comfort My People.
All right, and that's Proclaiming Justice to the Nation. That's where you get the PJTN.org. Laurie Cardoza-Moore, our guest, thanks for being with us today.
Steve, God bless you. Thank you for the opportunity.